Number 10. Murder Conspiracy. In January 2018, a young woman was found mauled to death, and investigators believe the suspects could be her two pit bulls. 22-year-old Bethany Stevens was found naked and dismembered in the woods in Goochland, Virginia. When the body was found, her dogs were also at the scene, eating at her ribcage. The gruesome image led law enforcement to believe the two pups were responsible for her death, but locals thought a homicidal maniac could be on the loose since Bethany was found with no clothes on. Those close to Stevens insisted the dogs Pac-Man and Tonka would never have hurt her. When an autopsy was conducted on the woman, they found no evidence of strangulation or sexual assault. Her phone was also found broken in half and covered in bite marks, but those who knew the dogs personally still refused to believe they could be the cause of the woman's death. Stevens was an experienced dog trainer, and this tragic incident sparked fears in the community that she might have been attacked by a much larger predator like a coyote or bear. Further investigation found human hair in the feces of both dogs, and it was concluded that they did in fact kill their owner. Sadly, the dogs were euthanized shortly after being caught. Number 9. Pitbull beheads owner. A dog is usually thought to be man's best friend, but sometimes they can be man's worst nightmare. In Karnataka, India, a man reportedly purchased a pitbull for the price of $14,000. Little did he know the same dog would later end his life. In May 2017, this unnamed man was found dead in a pool of his own blood. The dog was found near the body, completely red and soaked in blood too. Not only was the man dead, but his head was completely decapitated from his torso. Pit bulls have been bred for centuries to be hyper-aggressive, but nowadays people own these dogs hoping to tame the beast within them. And most of the time, pit bulls can be quite mild-tempered animals, kind if trained correctly and given the right amount of love and affection. But cases like this often fuel the stereotype that this breed is dangerous and out of control. We're unsure exactly what caused this pit bull to attack its owner, but there is a substantial amount of evidence to support this dog was ultimately responsible for the man's death. Number 8. Beast. A 10-year-old boy named Jack Liss from Caerphilly, South Wales was mauled to death by a dog while playing with his friend after school a few months ago in June of 2022. 19-year-old Brandon Hayden assumed responsibility for the large bully dog after seeing an ad for it on Facebook. It said the pup was free, but it was just not good around other dogs. Hayden had a limited amount of space in his home and asked his friend, 29-year-old Amy Salter, to keep the dog named Beast at her place for the time being. Hayden and Salter only owned the animal for 4 days before the incident went down. Before the young boy's attack, there were multiple other cases where Beast was aggressive towards other people and dogs. Closed-circuit television footage showed him jumping and biting someone walking by, and he also lunged at scared children while Hayden tried his best to hold him back. After the little boy was mauled, Hayden was put in jail for 4 years, while Salter was given 3 years. The boy's mother, Emma Whitfield, did not think these sentences went far enough, though, and even claimed Salter laughed as the dog lunged at people and kids. Number 7. Euthanized. 2 unregistered pit bulls snuck into their neighbor's backyard and supposedly attacked and killed the family's 3-year-old son. The pups also severely injured the boy's mother. In February 2021, just a month before the deadly incident, the family, who was originally from Pakistan, moved from Brooklyn to New Jersey. The young boy's father worked extremely hard for his family and had saved just enough money to move and buy them the tiny house. Unfortunately for them, they moved right next door to neighbors with extremely aggressive dogs. Multiple reports from other neighbors in the community stated that the dogs had bitten people all around the area, and one neighbor even said he tries to avoid walking near the house to not put himself in unnecessary danger. The toddler and his mother were just playing in their backyard that Tuesday evening when the dogs somehow got out of their fence and into the yard. The 2 canines immediately went after them, and when officers showed up on the scene, the dogs were shot in an attempt to save the family. The boy was airlifted to the hospital where he later passed away, and the mother was also hospitalized with serious injuries. Authorities did not mention the names of these victims, but hopefully the mother has made a recovery since that tragic day. Do you think pit bulls get a bad rap because their owners don't train them correctly, or because the breed itself is just too wildly unpredictable? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. Number 6. Dog kills homeless man. On the streets of South Austin, Texas, a dog attacked and killed a homeless man, according to officials from Austin-Travis County Emergency Medical Services and reports from the Austin Police. On May 14, 2022, medics were called at 2 a.m. to East Bend White Boulevard in South Austin after reports of a body being found. found. The man was surprisingly still alive when medical professionals arrived at the scene, but he was sadly pronounced dead just a short time later. It's unknown exactly what prompted this attack, and the name of the victim was never released to the public. The man was confirmed by investigators to be homeless, and they were working to locate his family to inform them of the unfortunate incident. Not much else is known about the case, and it was not stated if the dog was ever found. It's a sad thought, but the dog may have belonged to the homeless man himself. But now that he's passed, it can no longer be confirmed. Dogs are not typically aggressive unless provoked, but it's hard to say what happened in this case. Number 5, my hero. A woman and her 2-year-old Belgian Malinois named Eva were walking along the Trinity River in Northern California when a mountain lion came out of nowhere and set its sight on. The lion lunged at Erin Wilson, the dog's owner, and scratched her. When Wilson called out for Eva to help her, the dog quickly came running. Eva tried to defend her mom and tried to get the big cat to leave her alone. Wilson said that the dog, quote, hit that cat really hard, and the lion and Eva fought shortly until the cougar bit down hard on the canine's head. Thankfully, Wilson and another woman walking nearby forced the animal to leave by using some pepper spray that they had on hand. Eva had given the woman just enough time to act quickly and save their lives. The dog sadly suffered skull fractures and other injuries after bravely defending her owner. Shortly after the attack, it began having seizures. She was rushed to the nearest veterinary hospital, but her condition worsened, and Wilson said, quote, she just never woke up, end quote. The heroic dog, Eva, gave her life in order to save Wilson, and no matter how terrible some of these stories are, it's good to remember there are instances when these loyal companions act selflessly to save their owners from danger. Number 4, when stray dogs attack. In India during the summer of this year, 2 young boys while playing in the street were mauled by a pack of stray dogs. In the city of Bengaluru, India, stray dogs are a huge problem. In a report from the Bruhat, Bengaluru, Mahananagra, Police, the BBMT from 2019, it was estimated that there were a little over 3 million stray dogs in the city. Dog catching is a huge challenge for officials, and 51% of the stray population are not neutered, making the issue increasingly worse as time goes on. In June 2022, 2 children, 3-year-old B. Ravi Kumar and 5-year-old H. Sura, were playing outside of a construction site when a pack of 7 to 8 wild dogs chasing each other came running around onto the road. Without being provoked, one of the dogs bit Ravi, and after seeing him getting attacked, Surya started to run towards their house. Perhaps thinking it was some type of game, another dog chased Surya and bit his leg while he tried to get away. The other dogs continued to pounce on Ravi and bite until a woman named Chandramama nearby rushed over to the boys to chase the strays away. After the dogs were no longer a threat, the woman and her husband immediately rushed both of the young boys to Victoria Hospital to get medical attention. Luckily, both of the children survived the attack and were treated for their injuries thanks to the help of some good Samaritans. Number 3, little dogs versus big dog. In April 2022, a shocking video was shared with News 4 Jax of a young boy trying to protect his 2 small dogs from his neighbor's large dog that apparently gotten out of its fence. The incident happened on Crescent Street in Murray Hill, a neighborhood in Jacksonville, Florida. The young boy, Jamil George, was walking his chihuahuas, Sammy and Lily, in his front yard when he noticed the big dog next door poke his head out of their gate. The boy could basically sense what was about to happen next and tried to bring his animals back into the house, but it was already too late. Within seconds, the larger dog had escaped and gone after one of the chihuahuas. Jamil's mother, Stacy, was inside the house when the fight started and could hear the screams and yelps of her pets. She ran outside to try and help the situation in any way she could. Sammy took off across the street to escape the bigger dog that was right behind him. Lily started to chase the dog, which then turned around to attack her instead. Luckily, none of the animals were injured during this attempted fight, and they were able to get the neighbor's dog back behind the fence where it belonged. The George family explained in an interview that they were not pressing charges and planned to work it out peacefully to figure out a way to stop something like this from ever happening again. Number 2, scalped. A police dog going after a suspected shoplifter went way too far and ended up biting the scalp off a woman. In December 2020, 24-year-old Tamika Bates was hiding from the police in Brentwood, California after she and some friends allegedly made off with nearly $10,000 worth of stolen items from Ulta Beauty Supply. Officers were searching for the suspects with their police dog when they noticed Bates laying in a group of bushes. Apparently, the police ordered the dog to attack, and it went after the suspect without hesitation. The dog then latched onto Bates' skull and quite literally scalped her. Blood and internal tissue were visible after the incident, and the girl yelled out, "My whole brain is bleeding." Even though Bates did actually participate in shoplifting at the store, her attorneys pointed out that officers purposely sent the attack dog on her while she was unarmed without giving her any reasonable opportunity to surrender. She ultimately pleaded guilty to grand theft and spent a total of 120 days in jail for her crimes. But she has now filed a lawsuit civilly against the city that could end up giving her millions of dollars for her suffering. Number 1 Police Dog Takedown. A man facing felony charges linked to running from the police, carjacking, and domestic violence was ultimately taken down by a well-trained police dog on October 20th, 2021. In National City, California, officers were involved in a high-speed chase with this criminal. They tried to pull over the driver at 2 p.m. because they matched his vehicle to a car listed in the description of a domestic violence case that had happened on October 7th. Instead of pulling off to the side of the road and following police orders, he just kept on driving. He sped through the streets of the city and continued through Chula Vista and San Diego before finally making his way back to National City. Skyfox, a news helicopter, captured the whole chase from above, which showed the man's white sedan flying in and out of traffic, driving dangerously fast through residential neighborhoods and ignoring stop signs and traffic lights. Eventually, his car became blocked by another vehicle near the driveway of a parking lot off 23rd and B Streets, and the chase came to a halt. The driver then jumped out of his sedan and started running in an attempt to escape, but a police dog was released by officers. The canine chased and tackled the man to the ground almost instantly, and after he was pinned, they pulled the dog off him and placed him under arrest. Hopefully, they gave that dog a big treat after his heroic act of service and told him what a good boy he is. Number 10. Holding the trainer under. Kenneth Peters, a SeaWorld trainer, was nearly killed when a 5,000-pound or just under 2,300-kilogram orca dragged him underwater in front of a horrified audience in 2006. The orca, named Kasatka, submerged Peters during a show after the whale was upset after hearing her calf crying out in the middle of the display in the marine park. From out of nowhere, the giant orca grabbed Ken by the leg and pulled him underwater, trapping him at the bottom of the tank. Ken and Kasatka had been in the middle of a show. The whale was supposed to lift Ken out of the water on the tip of her nose. The routine had been done flawlessly hundreds of times before, but when the pair burst through the surface, everyone quickly realized something wasn't right. Ken was seen flailing wildly, and the whale had a hold of his foot and wasn't letting go. The crowd gasped in shock, then watched helplessly as the killer whale dove deep into the pool, taking Ken down with her. Kasatka held him underwater for about 60 seconds, came back to the surface to take a breath, then yanked him under again. She eventually let him go, but he was just seconds away from drowning. The trainer held his breath the entire time and escaped with a broken foot and puncture wounds from her knife-like sharp teeth. This wasn't actually the first time Kasatka had attacked Ken. In 1993, she tried to bite him, and again in 1999. Then, after she gave birth to her calf, she became more aggressive and unpredictable. Sadly, Kasatka developed pneumonia in 2008 and was sick until 2017. She was euthanized at the age of 40. Number 9. Killer whales versus blue whales. For the first time in history, killer whales have been recorded coordinating savage attacks against the largest animal on our planet, the blue whale. Researchers started looking for orca attacks on blue whales in 2019, and it didn't take them long to find. They've witnessed 3 separate attacks off the coast of Australia, and each attack was carefully coordinated by a pod of orcas led by a female killer whale. In 2019, 2 blue whales were killed 16 days apart, then a third in 2021. These were healthy adult blue whales, massive creatures that can grow over 100 feet or just about 30 meters long. One of the attacks was carried out by at least 12 orcas, made up of 8 females, 1 adult male, with younger whales watching and learning from the parents. The orcas surrounded the blue whale, then they charged at it and began to bite off huge chunks of its blubber. After an hour of relentless attacking, the blue whale was weak enough to take it down. Its last moments involved orcas biting its head, and a female orca even swam into its giant mouth and ate its tongue as the whale passed out. After the blue whale was killed, 50 more orcas joined in for a community feeding. A bunch of birds showed up too, and for days there were other creatures feeding on the scraps of a carcass floating in the water. Number 8. Attacking a yacht. 63-year-old Alan Bruce was manning a 44-foot or just about 14-meter sailing yacht with 49-year-old Frenchman Stephen Peer on the Gibraltar Strait when 4 orcas began attacking and shaking their boat in an attempt to push them off. The two were able to capture a brief video of the animals, which included an 18-foot or just about 5.5-meter male, a female, and their 2 calves. After 90 minutes of harassment from the animals who continued to shove the hull of the boat, the veteran sailors withdrew below deck and radioed for help. The orcas destroyed the rudder, which crippled the boat, seemingly as payback for people overfishing in their natural habitat. Bruce described the details of the attack that started when he felt something hit the bottom of the boat. After checking, he saw a large male orca and several others following behind. He then ran to turn off the engine to let them play with the boat a bit and then hopefully lose interest. He explains he did this since orcas can swim at speeds of up to 34 miles or just about 55 kilometers per hour and could smash the boat if they wanted to. That's why he didn't want to provoke them. The school of orcas was pushing the 10-ton boat sideways by then. Despite losing the main rudder, Bruce and his partner maneuvered it somehow to port 10 kilometers or just over 6 miles to the north. By this point, it was dark, so they had to dock the boat with no light. Thankfully, the whale pod finally left the yacht alone. Number 7. Shipwrecked. Despite no reports of orcas killing humans in the wild existing, there have been a small number of reported splashes. A family was shipwrecked in the Pacific Ocean by a pod of killer whales and had to survive in a dinghy for more than a month with hardly any food or drinking water. A pod of orcas struck the hull of Lucette, a 43-foot or just about 13-meter long wooden boat captained by the author and sailor Douglas Robertson. The Lucette was about 200 miles or just about 320 kilometers from the Galapagos Islands back in 1972. He, his wife Lynn, and their 3 children and a crew member were able to escape the sinking vessel. The 6 passengers fled in an inflatable life raft and a dinghy, but with little food and water to help them out. For weeks they lived like castaways, gathering rainwater and catching turtles, mahi-mahi, and flying fish while sailing towards Central America on a sail they made by hand. They were ultimately rescued, but not until weeks later. Do you think you could survive floating in the ocean for a month? Tell us in the comments and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Number 6. Dawn BRANCHEAU. Dawn BRANCHEAU knew early on in her life that she wanted to work with orcas. She was 10 when she first saw Shamu at SeaWorld, possibly the most renowned killer whale in captivity. In a 2006 interview, she said the first time she saw Shamu, she told her mother that this is what she wanted to pursue in her life. It was her dream. Dawn quickly rose to fame as being one of the best trainers. Her image was splashed on billboards and commercials, and she was the key in modernizing Shamu's performance. Dawn regularly performed with orcas and would do many stunts alongside them for years. Although Dawn was fully aware of the risks associated with working with orcas, she also understood that orcas did not attack humans in the wild, and attacks on humans in captivity are extremely rare. On February 24, 2010, Dawn was performing a show with an orca named Tilikum at the Orlando SeaWorld. Her shows with orcas brought millions of tourist dollars into the park. But on that fateful day, everything changed, and ever since then, SeaWorld has not held another orca show with a human inside the tank. Dawn had developed a close bond with Tilikum. They had a great relationship, and Dawn really loved the whale, and to this day, it's unclear why Tilikum snapped. They were in the middle of the show when, out of nowhere, Tilikum grabbed Dawn by her ponytail, swung her around underwater like she was a toy, and shook her violently. Dawn's jaw, ear, and knee were fractured from the jerking motions. Her ribs were snapped, and her vertebrae were completely destroyed. Her spinal cord was severed, and her scalp was ripped clean off her head. Dawn was 40 years old at the time of her death. Today, she is missed by her family and colleagues at SeaWorld, and if there's a silver lining, it's that Dawn died doing what she loved. The incident sparked a revolution that would prohibit trainers from working in tanks with killer whales, and in 2016, SeaWorld announced it would no longer breed orcas in captivity. In a few years, there may not be a single orca left in captivity in the United States. Number 5. Hunting for sea turtles. In 2017, Nicholas Davalos, a photographer and biology student, was conducting field work off the coast of Isla Isabela, the biggest island in the Galapagos. Nicholas was snorkeling at the surface when he saw 3 orcas go after a couple of green sea turtles. There was 1 adult and 2 juveniles. The oldest of the orcas used the front of its head to violently spin the turtle around underwater. It was literally playing with its food. Then one of the younger orcas grabbed a second green turtle by the fin and dragged it down deep below the surface. The killer whales did this for about 30 minutes before getting tired and swimming away. One of the turtles died from their bullying, and to make it even worse, the orcas didn't even eat the turtle that they killed. According to Robert Pittman with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, orcas often play with potential prey, then simply move on without even bothering to eat it. Robert compared them to cats, saying orcas can't help but push around sea turtles like a cat. Robert compared them to cats, saying that orcas can't help but push around sea turtles like cats push around a helpless mouse. Number 4. Orca and the Boy. A 12-year-old boy was enjoying himself in the shallow water near Ketchian, Alaska in the August of 2005. His name was Ellis Miller, and in only 4 feet or just over 1 meter of water, he found himself being attacked by a killer whale. From out of nowhere, a huge orca, 25 feet or just about 7.5 meters long, sped directly toward him. Before you freak out, the whale didn't eat the small child, but he did bump him and whacked Ellis with its huge head hard enough to send the boy flailing through the water. Biologists say either the whale was curious or it changed its mind about having the child for a snack at the last second. Gary Freitag, a volunteer with the National Marine Fishery Service, said that if the whale really wanted to take him, it very easily could have. Instead, the whale approached the child probably thinking he was a seal, one of the killer whale's favorite meals. Then, when it realized it was about to eat a human, it called off the attack. This is interesting because it shows that even in the wild, and even if whales sometimes go out of their way to destroy boats, they still don't enjoy eating humans. There's never been a documented killer whale attack on a human in the wild. The only fatal interactions with killer whales happen in water parks. Number 3. KELTIE BYRNE. There have been 4 reported deadly orca attacks while in captivity, with one male orca named Tilikum, as we mentioned earlier, being the culprit in 3 of them. The first happened on February 20th, 1991 in Victoria, British Columbia at Sealand of the Pacific. Tilikum raced to KELTIE BYRNE, a trainer, grabbed her by the foot and dragged her underwater. He attacked alongside 2 smaller female orcas in the tank. Visitors were terrified as 3 whales repeatedly shoved and flung the trainer around the pool. Once, Byrne even reached the pool's edge and tried to climb out, but the orcas dragged her back into the water. Other trainers tried to help Byrne by throwing a life ring at her, but the orcas bumped it away. Byrne surfaced 3 times before being pulled under again, and she eventually drowned from the struggle, and her body was rescued from the tank just a few hours later. Sealand of the Pacific shut down shortly after the incident, and the attraction sold all of its whales to the SeaWorld company. Number 2. Boat Adrift. In November 2021, a couple from the United Kingdom was stranded miles off the coast of Portugal after a killer whale attacked their boat. They were rescued early the next morning after an orca became interested in their sailboat. In July of 2020, reports of killer whales approaching boats in the waters off Spain and Portugal began to spread, and authorities identified 3 juvenile orcas as suspects at the time. The whales had rammed the rudders of some boats, even breaking them in some cases. It was unclear why the killer whales began to behave this way, but researchers believed it was unlikely due to aggression and more likely due to them being mischievous. But some of the incidents lasted for hours, and passengers described them as terrifying. Number 1. Alexis Martinez. Keto the orca is confined to a swimming pool where he spends his days entertaining tourists. In 1995, his mother, Kalina, gave birth to him, the first orca to be born in a SeaWorld amusement park, and has fathered multiple babies while in captivity since. The massive killer whale is one of the main attractions at Tenerife, Spain's Loro Parque, and has also traveled the world to perform and entertain. He formerly worked at theme parks in San Diego, Ohio, and Texas before getting relocated to his current Spanish residence. Something snapped in Keto just 3 years after his final move, though. On Christmas Eve 2009, he launched a terrible and lethal attack on one of his trainers, Alexis Martinez. Martinez worked as a trainer for years and was used to working with orcas. The 29-year-old was used to Keto, but on this fateful day, the massive orca reacted in a way his trainers had never seen before, and Alexis paid the ultimate price. Everything seemed normal on the day until the trainer and the whale started acting oddly while working in the training pool. He fumbled several of his techniques but appeared relaxed as he floated on the surface of the pool with his trainer Alexis. But in the days that followed, one of their other employees said Keto seemed to have placed himself between his trainer and his stage on purpose. Keto began leaning into his trainer when the underwater stage call sounded and Alexis started to swim. Another trainer tried controls that always worked with orcas, but Keto refused to obey and drove Alexis to the pool's bottom. Desperate, the trainer, who was still on the pool's edge, saw how severe the situation had become and attempted more signals to bring Keto back under control. It seemed to work as the orca rose to the surface of the pool and took a breath before diving back down to Alexis. The next scene for those watching was seeing Keto resurface with Alexis on the tip of his nose and his jaws shut. Keto eventually let go of her, but the 29-year-old trainer slid to the bottom of the pool. Other trainers, now frantic, urgently tried to pull Keto into another pool, but he resisted by messing with the barrier. Only after they threw a net into the pool did Keto swim inside, and Alexis's body was retrieved from the bottom of the water. She'd sustained severe injuries, including massive internal bleeding, and there was nothing that could be done to save her. Alexis died from grave injuries caused by the attack, including multiple compression fractures, tears to important organs, and the animal's bite marks on her body. The tragedy came exactly 2 months after the tragic case of SeaWorld trainer Dawn BRANCHEAU.
Number 8. Orcas. There's a reason orcas are commonly known as killer whales. These watery beasts are part of the dolphin family, and can be found living practically all over the world. Orcas have incredibly long lifetimes, with females sometimes living longer than most humans, up to 100 years. Males, on the other hand, have shorter lifespans and only live for about 60 years. What the males lack in lifespan, they make up in weight. The adult typically weighs nearly 6 tons, and the females only clock in at 3 tons at the maximum. The distinct black and white coloring adds to the allure of an orca. They truly look and behave like ninjas in the water. While hunting, groups of up to 40 killer whales at a time employ intelligent hunting tactics when picking out their prey. Similarly to bats and other sea creatures, orcas create clicking noises and are experts at echolocation, which helps them identify their victims. In August of 2022, Esther Storkson was woken up by violent jolts while on her father's yacht off the coast of France. When she went on deck to see what the commotion was about, she immediately noticed multiple orcas in the water surrounding the boat on all sides. The beasts repeatedly rammed into the yacht as if it was a coordinated attack. Esther and her dad could only hope for the best as they waited out the fury. At one point, the entire ship was rotated a full 180 degrees. Those orcas must have had some pretty thick noggins and an insane vendetta to do what they did. After waiting in terror for 15 minutes, the killer whales stopped their assault on the yacht. Once they felt the coast was clear, they dipped a camera underwater to see what kind of damage was done by the orcas. A majority of the ship's rudder had been broken off, and several areas of metal were severely bent. Thankfully, this was a rare event. While orcas are deadly predators in most contexts of nature, there hasn't been a single recorded incident of a killer whale taking the life of a human in the wild. Those in captivity have been known to lash out though. Scientists aren't really sure why the orcas attack Storkson's yacht, but there are some theories. One suggests that the nautical mammals simply like it when water pressure from a ship's propeller hits them. If they see a boat that isn't running its propeller, they get a little frustrated and might attack. Since the Storksons were idling in the water, it's likely the orcas just wanted them to turn on the propeller. But what do you think? Number 7. Buffaloes. Despite their cuddly appearance, buffaloes are often very dangerous. An adult male can weigh well over 2,000 pounds while reaching heights of 6 feet tall. Female buffaloes, while not as large as their counterparts, can still be upwards of 1,000 pounds at 5 or so feet high. With that much weight, you'd think they'd move fairly slowly, but surprisingly, they can run at over 35 miles an hour and are quick swimmers as well. With that movement speed and sheer mass, it's no wonder why buffaloes are dangerous. Luckily for us in nature, their diet mainly sticks to plants. However, they have been known to attack humans in the past. In the summer of 2018, during a wildlife safari tour in Zambia, a group of people encountered an angry buffalo. The massive creature stood straight in front of the tour's jeep and rammed its sharp horns into the front of the vehicle. According to reports of the incident, the animal already had some injuries. The photographer who captured the attack believes this may have been why it was so aggressive and easily provoked. This particular type of buffalo lives in Africa and some regions of Southern Asia, and their lifespan is about 20 years. Its horns have been known to grow several feet long at times. Luckily in this case, they were much shorter. Thankfully, no one on the Jeep was injured during the buffalo's rams, and the mammal is now being taken care of by a local wildlife organization. Number 6. Rhinos. As one of the biggest predators on our list, rhinos can weigh over 7,700 pounds. Considering these beasts pretty much only eat grass and some leaves now and then, that's very impressive. Their trademark horns can also grow up to 7 centimeters per year, with the record coming in at almost 5 feet long. You'd think rhinos would rely on these horns to defend themselves, but more often than not, when faced with danger, they use their teeth instead. India's Kaziranga National Park houses all kinds of wildlife like elephants, dolphins, tigers, and it's been named as the #1 place to find one-horned rhinos. In March 2020, 2 employees of the park were patrolling a small portion of the Kohora Range when things quickly went south. Bikura Bora and Anil Kalita were targeted by a giant rhino. Unfortunately, Bora wouldn't survive the attack and died at the scene. Kalita, on the other hand, made it away from the animal with just a few injuries. This attack was just one of many in this park and around the world. According to Kaziranga's assistant conservator of forest, Retubiban Bora, 11 deaths have resulted from rhino attacks since 1992 alone, with over 65 injured. While the massive animals don't typically go after humans, they will react if approached or threatened. Rhino horns are a sought-after commodity for poachers, so it's very likely more rhinos and humans will be killed in upcoming years. Number 5. Polar bears. 1,100-pound giant icy mammals roam the Arctic plains and scour the nearby seas for food. Polar bears mainly eat seals, but also partake in smaller prey if the circumstances call for it. For the most part, they don't do much other than hunt. They're very strong swimmers, with the longest stretch of time a polar bear has spent in the water totaling over 9 days. The bear traveled 426 miles. Their lifespans range anywhere from 15 years in the wild to a record 45 years in captivity. Surprisingly, despite what most people think, polar bears are actually black. The Arctic predators grow white fur coats to camouflage into their environment and to stay warm amid below freezing temperatures. However, underneath all the fluff, they look quite unsettling with wrinkled black skin similar to a hairless cat. On July 24, 2013, a man named Matt Dyer was hiking with a group of 7 people at Canada's Torngat Mountains National Park. They stopped on their journey to rest when suddenly, Matt was yanked out of his tent by a massive polar bear. The creature proceeded to maul the helpless man until other members of the group reacted to the attack. They set off flares to scare the bear away, and luckily, their plan worked. There was a doctor amongst the hikers who quickly attended to Dyer's wounds and broken bones. Once he was relatively stabilized, a helicopter picked Matt up and took him to a proper medical facility. In the assault, the polar bear cracked Dyer's vertebrae, causing a collapsed lung and more. On top of all this, the man's mobility and speech were also partially affected. Even though Arctic bears seem nice on Coca-Cola ads wearing peaceful red scarves, if you ever find yourself face to face with one in a wild setting, you should definitely say a prayer. Would you rather encounter a polar bear or a hippo in the wild? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. Number 4. Hippos. Hippos are one of the most dangerous animals in the world. They're mainly indigenous to Africa and parts of Colombia and can grow to weigh over 3,500 pounds. Similarly to buffalo, these creatures are herbivores and can be very fast. Some can run up to 30 miles an hour, and they can grow to be 18 feet long. Hippos are commonly found resting in water such as lakes, rivers, or streams. By staying close to these areas, they can keep cool in the mud and avoid getting sunburns. It's estimated that nearly 500 people die from hippo attacks every year on the African continent. In 1996, while leading a canoe tour in Zimbabwe, Paul Templer came face to face with a terrifying hippo. His group was getting close to Victoria Falls on the Zambezi River when suddenly, one of the members was knocked out of their canoe. In an attempt to help his friend, Paul tried to make his way over to them, but then he saw something in the corner of his eye. A massive hippo was barreling towards him at an incredible speed like a torpedo. Before he knew it, Paul blinked his eyes and was trapped in the hippo's jaws. He described it as slimy with an awful rotten egg stench. Somehow, Paul wrestled with the beast and managed to grab its tusks, allowing him to force his body out of the animal's mouth. However, the hippo wasn't giving up that easily. Again, it chomped down on the man, this time by his feet before spitting him back out. Paul took this slim chance to swim towards the group. Suddenly, the creature latched onto him once more and quickly pulled him under the water. One of Paul's friends was able to save him using an outstretched paddle. The group then tried to get to a hospital to treat the man's wounds as soon as possible, but it took 8 long, painful hours. Paul survived this incident after getting his left arm amputated, but sadly, his buddy that first fell into the water drowned during the chaos. Number 3. Leopard seals. You don't typically think of seals as dangerous, but you'd be surprised what these aquatic teddy bears are hiding. Leopard seals weigh over 1,300 pounds and can grow to be about 10 feet in length. They have sleek, serpentine figures that help them speed through water at over 25 miles an hour. In the past, these seals with razor-sharp smiles have fed on humans. From what we know, leopard seals have dragged humans and other prey underwater at depths of almost 200 feet in order to drown their victims before a feast. In September 2021, 3 fishermen barely survived an encounter with a leopard seal. The attack occurred while they were diving near a reef a few hundred feet offshore the False Bay in South Africa. Out of nowhere, the seal appeared and started biting the men. Luckily, they all survived, but the guys say it was a struggle as they literally fought for their lives. The creature snapped off the divers' flippers and in the chaos made them drop their spear guns. The men say that it took them almost 30 minutes to make it back to shore after the first attack. This just serves as a good cautionary tale. Always watch your back, even if you're underwater. Number 2. Komodo dragons. Contrary to some beliefs, Komodo dragons aren't actually dragons at all. They're just very large and dangerous lizards. Komodos can grow nearly 10 feet long and weigh an average of 150 pounds. The heaviest on record was 366 pounds, which is more than most people. On top of their size, these lizards carry a deadly venom in their saliva to poison their prey. They mainly live on islands in Indonesia, but are believed to have originated down under in the Australian continent. The sense of smell on these scaly creatures is deadly accurate. Apparently, they can make out the odor of prey from over 2.5 miles away. Unlike some other predators featured on our list, Komodo dragons are strict carnivores. In some recorded cases, larger members of the species have cannibalized on smaller, weaker dragons. In 2017, a Komodo dragon in Indonesia bit 50-year-old Lanli Ali when he tried interacting with it. The man was thoroughly warned to stay away from the lizards since they can be quite dangerous, but he ignored them and threw caution to the wind. The creature bit Lon on his leg before people nearby pulled him to safety. He was later taken to a medical facility in order to treat his injuries. Number 1. Cassowaries. Almost everyone knows that most modern bird species descended from dinosaurs, but cassowaries definitely look the part. At their tallest and heaviest, these birds are over 5.5 feet tall and weigh 157 pounds. They have dangerous claws on their feet that look almost as if they belong to a velociraptor. Along with this, the birds have tiny hidden claws on vestigial wings. While their ancestors were able to fly, cassowaries no longer have the ability to, but what they lack in flight, they make up for in jumping. The giant birds are able to leap 7 feet into the air and run at nearly 30 miles an hour. In April 2019, a man in Florida was killed by his own cassowary. Apparently, he fell near the bird before he was attacked. The San Diego Zoo's website says that with one swift kick, these dangerous creatures can slice into anything that tries to attack it. In this particular case, the fate of the cassowary who killed the man is unknown, but it's likely that it was either euthanized or sent to a rescue facility. What would you do if you came face to face with one of the world's most terrifying predators? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed what you saw, subscribe to see more. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Bad Badger.